Hello, Hey Boomer community. My name is Wendy Green, and I am your host for Hey Boomer. And Hey Boomer is a show for people who have retired or who are thinking about retirement, and they're asking themselves that question, what's next? So for the month of June, our topic, our theme is going to be about reinvention, and we're going to meet several people who have reinvented themselves, some more than one time. And the goal of Hey Boomer is to leave you inspired that this next phase of your life is going to be a worthwhile, meaningful, and inspiring stage of your life. Part of Hey Boomer is sponsored by Road Scholar. Road Scholar is the nonprofit leader in educational travel for boomers and beyond. They provide educational and adventure experiences in 50 states and in over 100 countries. If you want to learn more about Road Scholar, and I encourage you to, you can go to road, R-O-A-D, scholar.org/heyboomer. So check out some of the trips that we have all been putting off for the last couple of years. Today is a big day for Hey Boomer. Today, we are going live with our 100th episode. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to reminisce. The show began on April 13th of 2020, about 20 days after I got laid off because of the pandemic. And what I said to myself was, well, how do you want to feel now that you're not employed, you're in lockdown, the whole world is kind of strange. And I said, I want to feel relevant. I want to feel meaningful. I want to feel like what I do still matters. And I knew that there were going to be a lot of people in this age group that needed to feel that they mattered and that their lives still made a difference. And so on April the 13th of 2020, I started the Hey Boomer show without really ever doing a live show before. And we went live on Facebook as our initial show. And I have great gratitude for Doris McClellan, who was brave enough to be my first guest on that show. One of the great joys of being on Hey Boomer is all of the fantastic people that I have met over the past 2 years. Initially, I was asking friends who had retired or who were thinking about retiring to be my guests. But as time went on, I have had nationally recognized guests from many areas of expertise. Of course, we've talked about reinvention once you step away from a full-time career. Some folks started their own thing, like the ladies from the Apple Valley Inn. Others focused on writing, like Deb Richardson Moore and Dr. Bob Saul. We've also talked about strategies for retirement, including renewment support circles with Helen Dennis, home choices with Ryan Frederick, and sustainable investing with Francie Heller. Many of my guests have shared volunteer opportunities with us. Remember when we talked to Eva and Kim about the Mother's Day movement? And we learned about sustainable communities with the work going on at Furman University. And we talked about fundraising success for the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Walk with Sally Dunbar. Travel has been a big topic for this show. We've talked about traveling with grandchildren, solo traveling, and some of the travel experiences that are available to us through Road Scholar and through Travels with Talik. One of my favorite topics that when we talk about is the power of thought, how our thought can make our reality. Early on, we spoke with Matt about the unintended positives of the pandemic. We spoke with Glennis Redman about the power of poetry to heal. And who can forget Barry Shore, the ambassador of joy? Another big topic for Hey Boomer has been creativity. Do you remember we met Jill Korn and we learned about her audio drama work? We spoke with Hans Peterson and how he pivoted his successful abstract painting career, and John Weiss, the former police chief, now writer, painter, and photographer. Dementia and Alzheimer's has also been a recurring theme, whether we were talking about caregiving, creative care with Dr. Ann Basting, or the power of music with Carol Rosenstein. We've even had some performers on the show. Of course, you remember Stu and Jana and their ukulele performance, and we can't forget Jim Lauderdale, the Grammy-winning songwriter who graciously joined us. For all of these people and so many more, I want to say how grateful I am for the time you took to share your stories with us. And for my loyal listeners, without you, there would not be a Hey Boomer show or What's Next coaching. So thank you all. Rather than delving into my never too old stories today, I want to give us plenty of time to talk with Paul Long, but I did want to take a moment to tell you that the next What's Next 6-week coaching program is going to be starting on August the 2nd. It is a group coaching experience, and we go through a process and tools and discussion and live coaching to help you uncover what your What's Next chapter is going to look like. If you want more information about that, you can certainly email me at wendy@heyboomer.biz. We'll set up a time to chat and learn what you're going through and if the What's Next program might help. So let me tell you about Paul Long, and I'm going to bring him on so he doesn't have to sit and wait in the green room too much longer. Hi, Paul.
I was enjoying the snacks. Okay.
I know. Did we have the right things for you?
Oh, yes. Perfect.
Oh, good.
No brown M&Ms. I appreciate it.
Well, Paul Long is the 100th guest for Hey Boomer. Woo-hoo-hoo. So exciting.
Thank you.
And Paul is the founder of what he calls New Way Forward, which is now actually the 4th reinvention of his life. He says life version 4.0. In version 1, of course, he was growing up as also the son and the grandson of news reporters or people in the news business. And so Paul grew up very aware of storytelling and being involved in what was happening in the world. In version 2, he was an award-winning major market television news reporter himself, an anchor, a weatherman, and a special projects producer. In version 3 of his life, he's the Emmy-winning content creator for Paul Long Productions. He created and produced just about every kind of film and video, short of a motion picture. Well, not yet. And you can think of for major companies. He won an Emmy for Best Documentary, A Passing of the Torch. And here we are in version 4, A New Way Forward, which is Paul's new way forward, bringing to bear all of his experience, skill, and talent, as well as what he has learned himself and from thought leaders over the past 15 years on what it takes to live a life with joy, purpose, passion, relevance, and income. Paul lives in the Midwest with his college girlfriend / soulmate / wife, and together they have raised 2 exceptional sons. Well done, Paul.
Thank you. So far, so good.
So 100 shows, big milestone for me. And I was curious to start out with a question of what if you were going to be sure you were going to live to 100? How would you live your life from here on to 100?
The way I'm doing it now, ergo the new way forward. And actually, that's a perfect segue, if I may, as to why I'm doing what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do. So, yeah, as you mentioned, it was about 15 years or so ago. I was wondering, okay, what's next for me? I was saying, now what, right? Nobody on your show hasn't asked that question. Now what, now what, now what, now what? And to really cut to it, it shouldn't take people 15 years like it did me. And I had a lot of other things that I had to take care of in that period of time and so on and so forth. But it afforded me every single day of researching and thinking and listening from people who had successful lives or successfully transitioned their lives or how they accomplished things. And I had like this epiphany of how this realization of how we were looking at this phase of life in an old, outdated, maybe even totally untrue way, old beliefs, right? So I realized, and when I've shared this with people who are older, we had this discussion the other day. I don't use the word old because that has such negative connotations and baggage to it, but older just means older,
Just
older
means
phase
older.
of life. That when we get older, we've actually reached the ideal time in our life to make it my turn. To actually, this is the time when we have the greatest opportunity to have the kind of life we want, we need, we desire, that's fulfilling, that can continue to earn us the income, but in such a way that we need and want, that we're better off than we have at any other time in our life to do it. And we're already seeing those trends, huge trends. And by the way, that's kind of at the base of it. Things have changed in our world, in society, in technology, in health, in so many different fashions. We all know they've changed a lot, but have we been quick enough to see what that change means to us as individuals? And I think when it comes to being older, we are like still looking in the rearview mirror. We're assuming, we presume, we stereotype what it means to be of this age and what life should be like. Oh, I should retire. We strategize and plan and work our whole life to get to certain things. And then we just think, oh, I'll retire.
Yeah.
I won't have to go into work. I'll have a life of leisure, which of course we've learned from so many retirees that after about a year or so of the retirement honeymoon, they're in the retirement nightmare.
Right.
They're not relevant. They're not fulfilled. They don't have enough money, and alcoholism, divorce, drug abuse, all those things are on the rise. But that's what I really learned, and what really got me going in this direction was when I was seeing what other people who were retiring, or at retirement age, I should say, were doing. They were reinventing, reimagining themselves, and in ways that were slight to modified to radically different.
Right.
So because the opportunity, so with society, with economy, with technology, with our longer, not just lifespans, but health spans, affords it there for us. We just need to realize it, take the pause, and look for a new way forward that's ideal for us and us alone.
So I want to dig into that older, because I've seen some places where you're referring, or you're finding that people are starting to think about older even in their 40s. And I don't remember thinking about older in my 40s. So I'm curious how you define older and when you kind of think people start to think about it.
Well, I think in the first place, it's based on you, the individual. There are people, I've had people say, I know people who are 20 years younger than you, Paul, that are older than you are. And that's really what it is. It's not our chronological age. It's who we are as individuals, who we are physically, in terms of our attitude, in terms of our passions. And of course, when you're living with passion, if you're passionate about your life and you're living purposefully and fulfillingly, that's different than, well, I'm 65, so I'm supposed to be in decline and I'm supposed to go out to pasture and things of that sort. You can tell the difference in those people. You can look at my face and see an age, but if you knew me and if you saw me move and you knew my health and everything, I'm in better health than I've ever been in holistically in my entire life, and just doing little things about it. My drive and desire to do what I'm doing, the passion I have for it, is the foundation of what makes me healthier, because I work at it. Plus that's a key enabler. But also, when we're talking about the individuals and the way things have changed, well, I originally launched this right before the pandemic, this effort, as pro-boomer, because I was seeing everything that the boomers were going through. I'm a boomer, but I launched it in startup parlance, ready, fire, aim. In other words, just launch it, see what the deal is, and be totally prepared to pivot and change. I didn't realize it would be a radical pivot, but what I discovered is that the people who were really engaging with the content that I had about imagining this new way of this phase of life were primarily people in their 50s and GenXers and even older millennials. COVID comes along right after I launched, And and then we had the Great Resignation. You had so many, the big quit, so many people of all ages, but certainly I'm going to say 40 and above. And by the way, in Silicon Valley, one of the top professions in Silicon Valley are plastic surgeons, and their candidates are men in their late 30s who are already being viewed as irrelevant.
That's
So
unfortunate.
Silicon
Yeah.
Valley, 40
Yeah.
is older. But
Yeah.
the point is, if you look at it from a slightly different lens, 3 phases of life, pretty fundamental. In our youth, we learn. We become an adult and we're an apprentice in life. We're going from school to actually applying it in the real world. And then as we get older, we reach a point either within ourselves or a crisis or a loss of job, or we're just like, I'm fed up with living this default life or living the life I thought I was supposed to lead or the life my parents thought I was lead. There's got to be something more for me. There's got to be something more that's right for me. That started happening about 10 years ago with boomers in retirement or heading into retirement. Now that's happening to people in their 30s because the pandemic radically changed the way that we, as Richard Leiter in an interview I have with him on New Way Forward said, in times of crisis, we go deeper and higher. And when you do that, you start realizing things and you take that step back and say, what my ongoing mantra in my head in little things and big is, what am I doing? What am I doing?
Yeah. And it's interesting, Paul, that the ageist stuff that we do to ourselves holds us back. I am going through another transition. We always go through these things, right? We're always reinventing. Well, maybe not everybody, but, so I'm thinking about maybe I want some additional schooling, and I can still hear in my head, wow, you'll be 70 by the time you finish. Like, does that make sense? So it's like, even those of us, you and I, who are studying this and well-versed in this, we still have some of those little voices in our heads. I'm wondering how you address that when that comes up for you.
Well, in the first place, they're big voices.
They are big voices.
They
sometimes.
are like a
That's
loud
true.
cacophony of presumptions and assumptions and stereotypes and other people who haven't even thought about it. When I hear it, I hear an alarm bell. I seriously do. And, there's the old cliche of age is just a number. My gosh. I mean, I wonder how many people listening right now, raise a hand, clap, or saying, that's right. It is just a number unless you buy into it. I tell you, old age is a disease of the mind, not necessarily the body.
A lot of ways.
And so I also considered this, and this is part of my unintended epiphany that I had. So that documentary you mentioned, that won that thing there, it was called Passing of the Torch. It started out as a documentary that signified the 50th anniversary of John F. Kennedy, candidate John F. Kennedy's impromptu speech on the steps of the Michigan Union at the University of Michigan, in which he hadn't planned to say anything, and he actually happened to talk about the concept of the Peace Corps. How many of you would be willing, to go to Ghana and be an engineer, to go here and be a doctor and make a difference? And it actually that night launched a movement, the first movement of the 60s. Also that night, he got there, it was after one of his debates with Richard Nixon. He was just going there to sleep. There were 10,000 students on a school night when women had a curfew, when none of them could vote because the voting age was 21. Why were 10,000 students there? What I learned through this documentary, talking to people who were there, talking to people like Bill Moyers, Ted Sorensen, so many other people that were, very prevalent in that time. Tom Hayden, the activist who was the editor of the student paper, is that I realized there was a deeper story there. It was the story of the 60s, which we thought of as protest marches, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, bra burnings, draft card burnings. Those were manifestations. What happened was that there was a time in life, in society, in the economy, and everything else, where the youth of America and all over the world said, wait a minute, I'm not accepting what is on offer, what society and my parents expect me to do. I am going to decide my own life. I'm going to signify my own life. Now, it was messy and ugly at times, as change always is. But what boomers did then is today as a result of that. Who would have imagined an entrepreneur in their mid-20s unless they were selling pot or something? And yet now that's the venerated, but boomers are doing it again. They're
We
saying,
are.
I'm not going to accept this. This is actually my time. And whereas you think of the ideal entrepreneurs being in their 20s, the Kaufman Index shows that in the US, boomers lead millennials by a 2-to-1 margin in the number of startups in the US every year and have a higher rate of success. So to answer your question, I hear an alarm bell because I know things are changing for this older, quote unquote, generation, just like they did back in the 60s, because the conditions are ripe for it. It's just a matter of us of becoming aware of it and taking advantage of it.
Yeah. And you've had some interesting guests to talk about that kind of thing, like how do you confront that and some of the inner work that you were talking about. Is that something that you would share with us to go a little deeper on that inner work?
So many people, first of all, and in almost every single case, it's offering up practical, realistic, and true ways on how to, again, choose your adjective, pivot, transform, transition, adjust your mindset, whether it's towards something specific. Well, let me put it to you this way. I structured New Way Forward into 5 categories. The first one was new thinking in new ways, because you cannot expect to make a change in your life with old thinking and old outdated untrue beliefs. So it's a new way of looking things. Then there's passion and purpose. We want to live with purpose and have a purpose. It is incredibly important to every part of our being, and we want to be passionate about what we're doing. So in that case, I have 2 stars, 2 best people on earth for it. In terms of passion, Elena Love, who was a fast-tracking top pharmaceutical executive, who said, I'm not passionate about what I'm doing, but what the hell does that mean? And what she discovered researching with people at the University of Michigan, she's not from Michigan, was that passion isn't like golf or sex. Those are hobbies, but it's those core things within us that we need to fulfill, that we need to address, that we need to do something with in order to be passionate about our life. So she came up with these 10 archetypes and a passion profiler that will identify your top 3. And my top 3, for instance, are creative, builder, transformer. What am I doing?
Perfect. You're doing it.
And I'm passionate about it. And it
Yeah.
ties directly into purpose. So I have Richard Leider, who's the author of The Power of Purpose and a dozen other bestsellers. And his most recent one, Who Do You Want to Be When You Grow Old? And by the way, notice, not what do you want to be? Used to get asked, what do you want to be? Oh, I want to be an engineer. I want to be, no, who? This is his is aligned with exactly what I'm talking about. Those are incredible insights. Then on the job and income, how do you get a job? How do you overcome ageism? One of your guests I saw that was on there, John Tarnoff, how to reimagine your career, but also how to do it not just because I can do it, not just because I could do it, but should I do it? Can I find a way to earn an income, whether it's employment or whatever, in a way that aligns with this new way forward, that's totally aligned and right for me, that I'm passionate about and fits. And there's so many ways to earn an income now that the opportunities are endless. In fact, they're overwhelming unless you know what you're going for with your core. Then there's being well. And the fact that what the emphasis, the growing trend and emphasis finally is not on disease care, but health care. And in fact, when I post anything on this thing about how we focus on treatment rather than prevention, and the simple little small to moderate things that we can do in terms of exercise, in terms of diet, in terms of well-being, that give us years, that give us healthier life, that can be done so that you can achieve your new way forward, and then you can enjoy it. And, my phrase is, I want to die young.
Right.
At an older age.
Exactly. I love that.
Taking the morbidity rate from something like this to something like this, where, I want to be, in my late 90s and just having had a great day, and I just happened not to wake up that morning.
Yeah, I love that. I want to die young at an older age.
And then not last but not least, in something we're developing and building a platform for this community, because there's so many other people who are trying to do whatever you're trying to do. Other people are trying to do something similar, and or they've done it. And so the community will be offering connection or hearing from those people who have done it, but also the opportunity for people to find each other through it. In order to mastermind, in order to be an accountability buddy, in terms of just being able to support people, so that you're not just doing it yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Paul. And as I was thinking about this conversation with you, I was thinking about some of the men and the women that I have coached, and it seems to me, and I hate to generalize, but it seems to me that there's a different approach that men take and women take when they look at this stage of their life. And I wonder if you've noticed that, and if you have any thoughts about why that might be, or how they might approach it differently.
Certainly nothing quantifiable, and I'll be challenged to be qualifiable with it. I mean, certainly, whether it's by society or other means, well, we're all wired differently as individuals and things of that sort. And I know, even in my relationship, as non-stereotypical as it is in many ways, this thing about, if Kim says something to me and she just wants to share, I want to fix it.
Right.
It's taken me decades to learn to shut up and listen and validate. Okay. And I appreciate that. But,
and I think, on the other hand, men want to process quietly before they're ready to share and talk about it. And, so women, as we're going through this, at least this is my experience, as we're going through this, we tend to pull in our little support group of women, and we start talking about it and brainstorming and just bouncing ideas off of each other. And no one's trying to fix it. We're just sharing.
And that's where, by the way, it is a reversal with us, because I'll tend to be like, hey, Bob, hey, Larry, what do you think about, hey, Mo, hey, Curly, what do you think of this? And Kim will be like, so I'll know it's like, I'm going to share something with you to process, and she will want to do it by herself. So I mean, the point being is that, whatever works for you. And if you're in a relationship, not only respecting the way the other person needs to do it, but if your end goal is to find some alignment or figure something out or whatever, enable the other person to do it how it's best for them. But I think the big thing is especially avoiding or being, you want to talk about an alarm bell going off when you think you've got it, or you think you've got it nailed. It's all the more, it's kind of like the great myth of the cave you fear is the one you must enter. The thing that you fear the most is the very thing that you should take on, because that is the most telling. Very, very often what it is because it might invalidate your current thinking or the way that you've been. And that's very understandable. But when I feel that kind of resistance, the most pervasive disease on earth, resistance, that's when it's like, okay, now wait a minute. I need to challenge myself here. Right. People say, oh, you're anti-retirement, Paul. And I said, no, although I would not recommend it for anyone. With that said, there are many people out there for whom it is right. We're all different. We're all an experiment of one, as Richard Leiter says. I say at least challenge it so that you either don't fall into the trap or you totally validate it. So yeah, that's something that now you're going to have me thinking a lot about.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting perspective. So this cave of fear, I mean, if you look out 20 or 30 years, what is it that scares you the most?
Oh, we talked about this the other day.
We did.
This was good. And that is like, what do you really fear? Mm-hmm. And fear is very, very interesting. On the one hand, there is something called constructive fear. So what we fear and that we acknowledge and we fear it enough that we want to avoid it or overcome it or whatever, is a great, in a constructive way, enabler. The BS fear, I call it, is like the imposter syndrome. Oh, like doing what I'm doing And I've been on TV and all that other kind of stuff. It's like, oh, what will people think of me? And oh, I wonder what this person will think of this. And and by the way, my favorite one, who am I to do this?
Right.
Of course, if you look at virtually anyone who's done anything of significance throughout history, who the hell were they to have done what they did? But they did it. And so I use my greatest fear is the number one regret that people have on their deathbed. And that is looking back and saying, I didn't live my life. I didn't go for it. I didn't have the courage. I kept saying, I got to figure it out, which is an excuse to kick the can down the road. It's not living my life to the, so however you want to characterize it, I live the life of others. I just kept the lights on. I could have found another way to do it that was more fulfilling. Even when people say I work too much, there's a new way forward. It can be the work that is fulfilling and enjoyable and the balance of life that you need. My fear, whether I succeed or fail at what I'm doing right now, my fear would be that I didn't go for it. That to me would be the greatest travesty and waste of my life, even with great sons and family that I have and everything else.
Yeah. And I think that's a very common fear of, living the life of others. My mother, my father, my sister, they all said I should study this or I should do that with my life. And, that holds so many of us back. But I think stepping into that cave of fear, sometimes you need support for that too.
Oh, absolutely. If you can get it and you're open to it. But you hit on the really big thing there about, what your mother or your sister or colleagues or friends or whatever. What I found through all these years of research is that it's really two things that I want to share before we go. It's really hard to make change. So my first thing that helps me get past that is to choose my heart. So it's hard to get in good shape and lose weight. It's hard to get your finances in order. It's hard to change your life, but it's harder to not get in good health and good shape. It's harder not to fix your finances. It's harder not to change your life. You cannot change your life because it seems like it's easier, but you got the drip, drip, drip of water torture every day. You hate yourself for it and your life, and then you die with regret. Or you can choose the hard of, I'm going to step forward and do it. And what I found is that starting way back when, every single day that I do it, I'm happier. I feel better about myself. I make progress. There is no there, and I'm sure as hell not close to there. But, it's an improvement. But one of the biggest challenges and the most fundamental, almost first steps are beliefs, because there's a formula. Where you are right now is based on what your beliefs are and have been. And if that's not a satisfactory place, then you've got to change your beliefs. You've got to say, what beliefs do I have as that are either untrue or outdated or whatever. And so many of our beliefs about ourselves and I'm not talking politics and religion. I'm talking about ourselves in the world, emanated when we were children. The way our parents were, something that was said to us, you'll never amount to anything. You can't save money, whatever. Those beliefs stick with us till the day we die, even though they may have not even ever been true. And they sure as heck aren't true right now. Beliefs drive emotions. Emotions drive decisions. Decisions drive actions. Actions drive habits. And that drives you to where you are or where you're going.
Exactly. And changing beliefs is hard. But, it's sometimes choosing not to is also a choice, right? So if we're looking at what's next or a new way forward and we're telling ourselves, I can't do that. I don't have the intelligence to do that. I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the finances to do that. All of those are self-limiting beliefs. So you have to change the question. How can I do that? What would it take to do that? Who would I need in my circle to do that? Take away those limiting beliefs would make a huge difference.
Yeah. And I'll say this towards it. That's what New Way Forward's all about. There are so many great programs out there to achieve your goals, to be a high performance person, to all that other kind of stuff, which are phenomenal. There's so many phenomenal ones, but which one do you choose?
Mhm.
And what's the essential thing of the New Way Forward is that it's what is right for you. So in other words, you don't have to feel like an imposter. You don't have to think, well, I'm the next Steve Jobs or I'm the next this or that. It's something that's actually aligned with who you are and what you are, that it's taking your skills and experience and professional resume, whatever, but deconstructing it, that maybe it's not the way and in the sector or whatever that you were doing, but it is right for you. It's something that you're comfortable with and that you want, which by golly means that it's right for you. And that's where the joy is. That's where the fulfillment is. That's where the doability and viability is.
So we talked about the fear, Paul, but now 20, 30 years looking out, what are you excited about?
Continuing to grow and build this. And quite frankly, see this trend of viewing this as this time of life as my turn. This is the future. It's not people who are in their 30s right now, they're going to be doing this. This is going to not only be the trend, it's going to be the way of it. I really look forward to just continuing that journey and doing more and more work, spreading it out, offering things that are better, because doing all of that and the people that I connect with and community with and everything else, it's just literally waking up every morning passionate about what I'm doing, and I'm looking forward to just continuing to have that, and just life, being able to enjoy life.
Looking forward to your new way forward. I'm looking forward to seeing your new way forward as it evolves and grows. I think it's going to be very exciting and supportive for some of the work that I'm doing too. So I'm excited
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. So I always like to ask my guests, as you know, Hey Boomer is all about growing and being involved and being engaged in this next phase of life. And we've talked about a lot, but I wonder if there are 2 or 3 takeaways you'd like to leave with the audience today.
Yeah, I would. I'm a big believer in where attention goes, focus flows. And I'm also big on the power of intention. I realize that I've been doing, and I think everybody watching and listening right now would say anything I've successfully attained in life has come when I had a powerful intention. Not that I wanted it, not that I needed it, but that I was intending to have it. And I would challenge everybody to kind of put their attention on what is it that I really, really want? And then when you start asking that question, ask why. When you come up with like, well, I want this. Okay, well, why do you want that? And ask why several times. It's not necessarily to challenge it. It's actually to get at the root of why you want the things that you really want. And I think when you do that, where that attention starts going, you start realizing and discovering things about yourself. You start looking at things differently than you had ever looked at them before. And then you might also go into the belief thing of like, well, why don't I go after that? Or why don't I do something like that? I think what that starts doing is it's just opening and challenging your mind to the way you've been versus the way you want to be. And you start identifying things. And the beauty of it is where attention goes, energy flows, or attention focus goes, is that without thinking about it, you start thinking about it. You're driving, you're showering, you're cooking, whatever. And all of a sudden, you start having these realizations and your mind starts opening up, whether it's challenging what you're presuming to do or it opens something entirely different for you.
Yeah, and synchronicities start happening. You start to be aware of, wow, I would never have noticed that PBS special before, except that I'm thinking about that, so yeah, once your awareness is there. And that why, Paul, it's a super important question that we coaches use all the time, because you're right. It gets down to the root of what it is. Why?
You have to ask it several times. But I love Simon Sinek's golden circle, which we focus on the what and the how we're doing, whether it's a business, whether it's like, well, what am I going to do and how am I going to do it? but the first question should be why. And you have to answer that question. Sometimes you have to ask it many times, and you have to find out if that is an answer that aligns with who you are, because
Right.
you're right. Synchronicity, whether it's God, the universe, Harold, or your subconscious or your heart, however you want to characterize it, I don't care. It works.
Yeah. It's such a cool thing. I want to tell people how they can find you. So if you want to know Paul's website is New Way Forward. It's newwayfwd.com. And you can find and watch, because he's developing it as we speak day by day. New things are showing up. So check that out, newwayfwd.com. You can also email Paul directly at paul@newwayfwd.com. So get in touch. Tell him you liked the show. Tell him you have more questions, and let us both know what you think. Again, you can email me at wendy@heyboomer.biz. Let me know what you thought too. I would love to hear your comments. So let me tell you, next week, our reinvention person is going to be Deb Barroset. She's the founder and muse of something called Club Moxie. And Deb says after years of working in the corporate world, she chose to heed the call of her own soul and started her own business. It was a scary, uncertain time and one of the defining moments of her new life. Now, more than 5 years later, Club Moxie is serving and connecting women across the country as they claim their own defining moments and consciously create how they tend their energy, nurture their spirits, and show up in the world as their unique, shiny selves. Deb is a hoot. I know you're going to enjoy the conversation with her. I appreciate all of the viewers that joined us today. If you weren't able to listen live, or you know people that would like to hear the show, they can watch the recording. They can go and listen to us on any of the podcast channels by tomorrow. And please go and support our sponsor, Road Scholar. That's Road, ROAD, scholar.org/heyboomer. Means a lot to the show and to Road Scholar. So thank you for tuning in today. And I always like to remind all of you to live with passion, live with relevance, and live with courage. And remember, you are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. My name is Wendy Green, and this has been Hey Boomer.